Good morning, and thank you for joining us. This is how to obtain your Ohio prevention credentials. Just a reminder, there are no CEUs for this particular session. We will get started in 5 minutes. Good morning, folks, and welcome to this session. This is how to obtain your Ohio prevention credentials. Before we jump in, I just want to remind everyone this session does not come with CEUs. This session is strictly about how to obtain your prevention credentials in Ohio. Jennifer Benson will take all questions. There is a question box that you can drop any questions, anything you'd like to share. It's located at the bottom of your control panel. Just open it up, type it in, and hit send. You can also raise your hand. When you raise your hand, myself or Sarah, we're your moderators for today's program, we can unmute you. Just know that it's a two-part unmute process. So we'll unmute you on this end, but then you'll have to self-unmute too. I'm sure there'll be times where Jennifer will love to hear your voice. You know that there's an evaluation that will come with this. Even though there aren't credits for this particular session, we still would be grateful if you could fill out that evaluation for us. For all of the other sessions that come with CEUs, you do have to fill out the evaluation and have to provide us with your license number or your CHES ID number, and know that it's going to take us about 30 days to email out these certificates. And if any time you have any questions, feel free to reach out of any of the Prevention First staff. We do have some great sessions after this one today, so if you aren't registered, hop on over to the Prevention First Training Hub section of our website and register for those. And with that, I am going to introduce Jennifer Benson. So Jennifer Benson and I go back, oh golly, I think I can 20 years now. We actually started our
almost
on the same day. I can say Jennifer is a wonderful prevention professional and a friend. It's been a tough couple of months for her, or maybe it's just been weeks, because she is an FSU grad. And for any of you that follow,
stop.
Oh, it's just been painful. So let's go on today, because I know her team is working hard. So Jennifer is a consultant. She's also an OCAM coach, Ohio Coaching and Mentoring Network. Her expertise is everything that has to do with the credentials. So if you have questions on the RA, the professional development plan, the essay, the S, the C, any of the paperwork, the test, you have come to the right place. If you are supervising individuals that are going through this process, you have come to the right place, because if Jennifer doesn't know it, oh, we're in trouble, but she'll find it out for us. So without further ado, Jennifer Benson, take it away.
Oh, Christy Valentini Lackner, you are a mess. Good morning. I'm so glad to see so many people here, because as Christy said, I'm kind of a dork about this, and my biggest thing is to get as many people as I can on the road to credentials. It helps legitimize our field, and it helps bring professionalism to prevention. So just a quick what we're going to do. This will be an overview. I do want your questions, though. I do want you to kind of, question, ask things, figure out things. But if it's something that's more specific or more personal, I might ask you to email me and take it offline. Or there's also a couple of other trainings coming up that might be helpful as well. So if you have no clue what's going on, this is the place to be. So first thing, I want to do a quick poll just to find out where everyone is. If you would answer this for me. Oh, this is hilarious. It's pretty much everything. I love it. So it looks like most people know they need to get them, but they don't even know what to do. And I totally get that. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys for doing that. That helps me just kind of see where we are. So I'm going to close that out. All right, so let's get started. So at the end of this, you should be able to state what the credentials are. You should be able to state why someone should get credentialed, because you should. And you should be able to at least start, if not know how to complete the credentialing process. I know that even for me, who's helped hundreds of people do it, it still can be kind of confusing. So don't worry, don't feel inadequate. It's just a process that we have to get through. All right, there are some documents attached. I just want to make sure that you know you don't have to have them out right now, but I would suggest that you download them just so that you've got these things. There is a PDF version of this PowerPoint. And if you don't know where the handouts are, if you look over on your taskbar down near the bottom, it should say handouts. There's the Code of Ethics, because that's important. There's the Scope and Supervision Grid. And then there's kind of a one-page grid of what their credentials are and what it requires for each of them. So in your infinite spare time during this time, go over there and just hit download for each of those. You don't have to print them out, just hit download. All right, so just a quick answer to what are they? What are the credentials? So they are through the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board. It's the same board that licenses people who are doing chemical dependency treatment. If you have not been on their website, just go on, flip around a little bit, see what's all on there. There's an introductory level. So if you saw that poll and you were like, what in the world is an RA? That's the introductory level. And then there's some subsequent levels after that, and we'll get a little bit more into what those are. Getting these credentials does bring legitimacy and also helps us understand that scope of practice. So in other words, what are things that you can do for each of those levels? If you don't have credentials, you're really not supposed to be doing prevention. And so we want to make sure that we know what kind of credentials we need to be able to do our job. So in brief, and we'll go into each one of these, but in brief, we've got the registered applicant. That's basically you're filling out a professional development plan that says, I want to get my credentials, and this is how I want my career in prevention to go. It puts you on the scope of practice. So it says, okay, yep, you can do prevention work. It also puts you under that Code of Ethics, which means, yes, you need to keep yourself on those codes. But it also then opens that door to the next step. It kind of helps you figure out, all right, now what do I want to do next? Because here's your options. The Ohio Certified Prevention Specialist Assistant. And if you, like Christy and I, have been in the field for umpteen million years, this is something that came out, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. So this is kind of that next step. Then we have the Ohio Certified Prevention Specialist. And the top one is the Ohio Certified Prevention Consultant. I will do my best to say out the full names, but there is a high probability I will just say things like RA, OCPSA. It's just how I've been bred. So why do we need to get these? I know sometimes, if you work in an agency that has multiple activities, like it's a treatment agency, it's a recovery agency, it's a counseling agency, and you're a prevention agency, some people might say, well, why do you need that credential? So I wanted to make sure that we understood why. So sometimes if you're just a community member, and I say just a community member, but that's an extremely important position, it's important to, if you're going to do any kind of prevention stuff, that you go ahead and get those initial credentials, because it helps you better understand prevention, particularly those people who are on a coalition. A lot of times having multiple credentialed people on your coalition will help with funding. I mean, let's be honest, that's one of the things we have to worry about is money. So, if you're a community member on a coalition, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and get some of these credentials behind your name. If you are officially a prevention worker, and make sure that you don't call yourself a specialist until you are a specialist. So you are either a prevention worker, prevention coordinator, but you're not a prevention specialist until you're credentialed. Then, a lot of prevention programming, in fact, almost all, I won't say all because there'll be something that doesn't require, but it does require that you be credentialed. So we want to make sure that we are following our code of ethics and doing what is best for the people we're working with. Again, prevention funding often requires credentials. So if we want to be able to bring in money, we need to have those credentials. It also helps you be able to advocate in the community. So a lot of times people don't quite understand what prevention is. I don't know if any of you have gotten this, hey, what do you do? Oh, I work in alcohol and drug prevention. Oh, I'm so glad you're counseling those kids. We all know that that's not exactly what it is. I'm sorry, there's a question here. I'm a PhD in psychology working in the school system, but don't yet have an independent license. Is it possible to get credentials, or do I need an independent license first? Oh, yes, you will be fine. We are going to get you these credentials. You don't need an independent license yet. We'll get there, I promise. All right, so also if you're a prevention worker, it gets you under that scope of practice, which you'll be able to see when you download that document. So you can't do some of the prevention items unless you've got this credential. Let's say if you're credentialed in another discipline. I know a lot of people will say, well, I'm a LISW. Why do I need prevention? I can do the same things. Again, prevention programming requires that the presenter facilitator of the education be credentialed. There are some subtle differences between counseling and prevention. So, you need to understand the differences with prevention. And again, being under that scope of practice for prevention. All right, so how do we do this? And yes, we're going to go through this in an hour, but I promise you I will not answer every single 100% of your questions. A lot of this will require a one-on-one phone call. So step one. Step one is to become that registered applicant, because that's the initial credential and that puts you under that scope of practice. So for later credentials, you're going to need to prove that you've had some experience in prevention. And if you're not under the scope of practice, you're technically not having experience in prevention. So we need to get you that registered applicant. It does say at that point you are credentialed, and then you will be gaining experience under the scope of practice. On that Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board is a professional development plan. I'm going to show you some examples. You'll complete that. Now, I know some people will say, well, just, we're all in the same agency, so let's all copy each other's. Do not do that. I do not work for the board. I do not speak for the board, but I've talked with a lot of people on the board, including the head of the board, and she does not want to see copied professional development plans. This needs to be what you want to do in prevention. How do you want your journey to look? So that may be different than Bob Smith down the hall or Carrie over on the other side. Maybe you're working mostly in the community, so you might want to do things a little differently. You have to create an account on eLicense, and then you're going to upload that professional development plan. If you already have a credential in something else, you might already have an account on eLicense, so you may not need to create that account. It's all the same for like cosmetology and counseling and So you'll see a lot of different types of credentials on there. So let's see what the heck this even is. Oh, yes, I stuck this in here because this is kind of a new thing effective November 1st. Like I was saying, if you want to obtain documented work experience in prevention under a scope of practice with proper supervision, you have to obtain that RA first. This is a new position statement. They've always kind of said this, but now it's going to be official November 1st. So it's not that hard to do. It takes a little bit of thinking. There's actually a training on Friday that can help you, or we can do it one-on-one. So it's easier just to go ahead and do it. So this is what the professional development plan looks like. This is the first page. There's 3 pages, and there's different domains, which they're now going to be calling them content areas. You may hear that as well. But basically what you need to do is in each one of these content areas, you're going to think of what kind of education you want and what kind of experience you want. And there's different content areas because they want people to have experience in different areas. They don't want someone who's only ever done direct service. They want people who are a little more well-rounded. Now, it's okay if that's the main thing you do, but you just need to at least understand and have education and brief experience in some of the other areas. So this is just for an example. Do not, if I hear that I see one of these at the board, you're in trouble. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, think about this through yourself. So let's say the first domain, planning and evaluation. You're going to put down what kind of education you want. Maybe you have some college courses in evaluation. So you can put that down there. You can even specifically list out what college courses you've already had. Maybe then you see that there's an webinar through CADCA or Prevention First that you want to attend. Put that down there. Again, if you see the name of it, you can put the name down. And with the experience, this is going to be a little bit different. This is, you have education as your learning, experience is what you're going to do. Maybe you don't do any planning and evaluation, but you know what, you'll just say, I'm going to work with my supervisor just to understand it and see what those reports are like. Again, you don't have to be proficient in every area, but they want us to be well-rounded and at least understand every area. So something like the next one is prevention, education, and service delivery. And there are definitions for all of these. But maybe you're going to attend these types of trainings and then work with someone who's more experienced to learn about this. So it's not hard, but it's something that needs to be individual to each person. The next section, communication. Maybe you took a course in college on speech and communication. Fantastic. That's part of your education plan. And then maybe for communication, you want to work on some social media messages. So it doesn't have to be that you're out there giving speeches. It can be something like social media. For community organization, maybe you're going to go to some CADCA trainings and then just attend the community coalition meeting so that you can learn a little bit about that. Again, it doesn't have to be that you are running the coalition meeting. You're just going to it just to see and understand what a coalition is. I know when I started out in prevention, I didn't really understand what a coalition was, what it did and how it functioned. So by going to those meetings, then you start to realize, oh, okay, that's what that is. Again, it's just about learning how you're going to learn these different areas. Public policy and environmental change, maybe you had a college course in policy. Fantastic. Then also maybe you can, for experience, attend a local city council meeting. Again, it's just about going, and right now is a great time to get some of this experience because it's all on Zoom, so you can do it with your jammies on. I love it. In fact, I just watched my city council meeting via Zoom. Learned a lot and was able to do it at home. The last area is that professional growth and responsibility. So maybe you still need to seek out trainings. You don't know what you need, but you know that these are the areas where you want to get them. And then working with coworkers to learn other areas. Maybe you've got someone who does things at the college, so you want to go and just check out things, how that is in that age group. Or maybe there's someone who does life skills in the junior high, or incredible years in the first graders. Just going out and seeing how different coworkers do things. Again, Friday, Corey Brown is doing a training. Christy, maybe that is something you can drop in the chat box, the registration link for that. So if you want to be more specific and get into more details about that, you can do that. But also, if you want to, sit down individually, we can do that. There's myself, there's Corey, there's other people who can help with that. So that's step one, get that registered applicant. So after you turn that in, again, you'll make that account on eLicense and upload it and turn it in. You'll wait. There's a lot of waiting in this. You'll be waiting to see when you get that back and say you're approved. So during that time, you need to go ahead and start preparing for step 2. So if you have any college classes, get that unofficial transcript. That helps us figure out what goes where. Get together all your certificates for all your workshops. And everybody's different how they want to organize them. Maybe you have a binder where you put them in. Maybe you have a folder. For me, I scan everything in and then I put it into a folder. Thank you, Christy. Christy put up the registration link for anybody who wants to go to that training on Friday. But whatever you need to do to organize your certificates, do it now, do it early, because I've had so many people who get to like step 4 and they're like, oh my goodness, I just threw all those away because I didn't think I needed them, which makes my heart hurt. So please make sure that you do that. And at any point you can start gathering all those. You're going to make sure that your supervisory requirements are met, and we'll look at those, but that's also one of the handouts, because we can't just do all this work under the wrong credentialed supervisor. We need to make sure that our supervisor has the correct credentials. Again, a supervisor does not have to just be the person who signs your check. They can be your supervisor for work, but then you can have a different person who supervises your prevention work. So then after you get everything together, then we'll look at what type of credential, what's the next step, what's your next one you should be applying for. For most people, it will be the OCPSA, and that's okay. We're going to go through a whole flow chart on which one you should be applying for. But all of this is in preparation. So real quick, just so that you know, if you are an RA or an OCPSA, these are the people who can sign off on your supervising. So another OCPS or an OCPC, a medical doctor or an osteopathic doctor, a licensed psychologist, an RN nurse practitioner or clinical nurse specialist, a professional clinical counselor, LISW, SWI, MFT, or MFT, a licensed school counselor, or someone with a CHES. As you move then, so if you are having them sign your paperwork, this is someone who needs to be supervising that. Then if you become an Ohio Certified Prevention Specialist, you're going to be doing a more wide range of activities. Therefore, the people who supervise you need to be a little more focused in prevention work. So that's why the list is a little bit smaller. I've had some people say, well, wait a second. A doctor is a higher license than a nurse. But in general, someone who is a nurse does more prevention work. A doctor is more focused on disease and client or patient care. So the RN does a little more of that prevention work. So that's why they've done it this way. When you get to the OCPC, the highest credential, you don't need a supervisor. Doesn't mean, and I say this all the time in my ethics class, doesn't mean you don't need people around. That's why I have Christy Valentini-Lackner, because she is my sounding board for, oh my goodness, this happened, what should I do? So again, this is one of the handouts. It's a little different on that handout as far as the organization of it, but you've got to make sure that you've got the correct person supervising your prevention. All right, so this is going to end up looking like spaghetti soup, but as we go through this, I want you to think, maybe write down on paper, which line you would go on, yes or no, and it will tell us which would be the best credential after you get your RA. So RA is number one. That's the first one. And that's only lasts for 2 years. So you have to move on to something else. So the first question we ask is, do you have any college classes? It's okay if you don't, because you can still do stuff. If the answer is no, then have you done at least 100 hours of prevention work? For this one, it can be paid or volunteer. So let's say that you have worked on your county coalition for the last couple of years. You've been coming to meetings. That would be volunteer, unless you're paid to do it. And again, just so you know that this whole chart will be in that PDF of the PowerPoint. So, no college courses, but have you done at least 100 hours of prevention work? If the answer is no, then just give yourself a little more time to get more experience. Again, you've got 2 years for that 100 hours. You should be able to get it in that time. But if yes, you've already gotten that 100 hours, then the next question is, do you have at least 45 hours of education? So that can be, maybe you've gone to a SAPS, Substance Abuse Skills Training Program. I don't know how exactly that, Christy knows the full name. Or maybe you've done a bunch of smaller trainings, workshops at, say you've done OPEC, or say you've done Coalition Academy. Do you have at least 45 hours of that education? And half of those do need to be within the last 2 years. So you could have half of them could be from 10 years ago, but half of them do need to be within the last 2 years. If you haven't gotten those, then wait till you have more education. It's okay. Just look for more education. Right now, there is a ton of online education because of the pandemic and everyone's home. And there's been a lot of online training. So just watch for that. But if, yes, you do have those 100 hours of prevention work and 45 hours of education, then you should go ahead and apply for the OCPSA. If we go back to the top, it says, do you have any college courses? Okay, yes, I've got some college classes. So how much college do you have will be the next question. If you have your associates or several credentials or several courses, but not quite the bachelor's degree, then the next question is, have you done at least 2,000 hours of prevention work, paid or volunteer again? That's about a year. If you're working full-time. If you're not working full-time, it may be a little less. A little bit more. If you're working, say you're working 10 hours a week, it's going to be, longer time. If you have not done at least 2,000 hours, then go back to, have you done 100 hours? But let's say, yes, we've done 2,000 hours. Then the question is, do you have at least 120 hours of education? And 60 of those need to be within the last 5 years. So let's say that associates, if you were like me and your associates is from a billion years ago, you can do up to 60 hours from that college degree, but then the other 60 has to be within the last 5 years. Again, this is why we never throw out certificates for training. The answer is no, then we'll go back and say, do we have at least 45 hours? But if the answer is yes, we've got 120 hours, so we've got 2,000 hours of work and 120 hours of education, then OCPS would be the best option. All right, so let's go back up. Do you have any college courses? Yes. How much college do you have? Let's say you've got a bachelor's degree or higher, like my friend who asked about it, and she has her PhD. If you have college classes, then the question is, have you done at least 6,000 hours of paid prevention work? It's about 3 years. Again, it's, depending on how many hours a week you work. And 4,000 of those hours do need to be in managing programs. So it can't just be that you've done, direct service for, 5 years. It needs to be that part of that time you are managing some of those programs. Well, if you don't have all of that, then we need to go back and look. Do you have 2,000 hours? And go back down that train. But let's say you do have these 6,000 hours, 4,000 of which is in managing programs. The next question would be, do you have at least 120 hours of education? Again, 60 within the last 5 years. If the answer is no, then we go back and say, well, do you have at least, the hours needed for the OCPSA? Because someone who has a bachelor's degree or higher may end up getting the OCPSA to begin with because they don't have enough education hours. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's say the answer is yes, you do have those 120 hours. 5-year requirement apply to the 2,000 hours of work. Okay, I assume what you mean is the 5 years, has to be within the last 5 years. No. But the question, no, it does not. You could have 2,000 hours over the last 20 years. But that might be a let's talk and see, make sure that it's the right answer. I want to make sure, because some of them are a little more tricky. Okay, so that 120 hours of education, 60 within the last 5 years. So if you do have that, the next question will be, do you have 90 hours of administrative or supervisory education? This is on top of that 120. So there are definitions for the administrative or supervisory education. It can be anything from grant writing, statistics, HR procedures. It's basically things that would make you a good manager or someone who could run a prevention program. Because if the answer is no, then you probably should get the OCPS until you can get some of those hours. But if you do have all of this plus the 90 hours, then you can apply for the OCPC. I'm going to leave this here a second if you want to take a screenshot. But again, it is in the PowerPoint PDF that's in those handouts. But all of this to say that all 3 of these second level credentials, the OCPSA, the OCPS, and the OCPC, are very much useful. They're very much needed, and they're very much acceptable. It's not like you are not as good if you have one or the other. Now, my goal is to always get as many people to that OCPC level as possible, because there's a lot more that you can do. There's a lot more under the scope of practice. All right. So, the prevention education definitions. There is a list on the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board website. Apparently they are doing some tweaking of some of the definitions, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a change, that you should still be able to use whatever list you download. But they are in the process of changing some things, so I always think you should, go on right when you're getting ready to submit anything and make sure you have all the most updated. If you have agendas or a syllabus for some kind of education or training, keep that if possible. The reason I say that is, let's say you've got a training that's titled All the Stars in the Sky. I don't know. And it was all about, doing evaluation, but the title says nothing about that. So if you turn that in and they say, wait a second, what was this training about? You can then give them the agenda and say, here's what was in the training. It just keeps everybody honest and knowing exactly what the training was about. And then after you, when you're looking for different trainings to do, you can look at that list, and when you have started to put things in the grid, and I'll show you the grid here in a minute, but it'll help you then say, okay, you know what, I need more under Content Area 3. So pull out that education definitions list and use that to look for trainings that might fit. So here's step 2. And if you've been around for a while, you'll see that this is a new grid. This grid is a little bit different because it is split out by content area instead of putting all the courses on it and then figuring out which content area later. But these content areas should look similar to the prevention professional development grid because they are the same. So you can, on that professional development planning grid, you can say, well, you know what, I said I was going to go to a CADCA training for planning and evaluation, and I did, so there we go. I'm going to put it right there on that list. Date of the course name, and the number of hours covered. You'll do that for each area, and this is the OCPSA grid. You'll see that they have different numbers of hours listed. These are the number of hours, the minimum number. Again, they want you to have a little bit in each one of these areas. You can have 50 hours under P1 as long as you have 3 hours in some of the others. Because it doesn't matter if you have extra. You just need to have the minimum that you've done a little bit of education and everything. When you look at your certificates, let's see, another question. Did any of the hours increase in each area on the grid? Not at this point. As far as I know, everything is the same as far as the number of hours in each area. Now, I say these things and I said something about a supervisory form and then all of a sudden they put it all online. So these can change, but as of today, September 30th, no, they're all still 3 except for the professional development's 15, unless you look at some of the higher credentials. When you look at your certificates, these are some of the ways you can figure out which area they go in. So at the bottom of certificates, if they are approved through the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board, they will have some sort of designation of where to put the hours. So like upper left here, it says P2, Prevention, Education, and Service Delivery, 10.75. So that means this training was 10.75 hours, and you would put it in P2. Now you'll see on all of these, it says R1, Field-Related Other. That R1 has to do with if you are renewing. So let's say you've had your credentials, and every 2 years you have to get enough hours to renew. That's how many hours you would get to renew. Upper right, it says 1.5, Ohio Chemical Dependency Board, in P2 1.5. So you would know that on your grid under P2 you would put 1.5. And then down there at the bottom we've got P7, Ethics and Prevention, and it's a 6-hour class. So that's how you can look. I always look there first to see if there's anything on your certificate that tells you exactly where to put it. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's the easiest. Don't work harder, work smarter. Look at those, see what you can put where very easily. If it doesn't have that, that's when we then go to the definitions and figure out from there where might be best to go. So, next step will be completing that education grid. Here's just some tips on that. If you had a college course, and if that college course was a semester and you earned 3 credit hours, that equals 45 hours that you would put on the grid. Because think about it. If you went to class 3 hours a week for 15 weeks, that was a total of 45 hours. So, that's why when you look at a college course, you could knock it out pretty quick. If it was a quarter hour, that would be 10 weeks. You would multiply it by 10. Now, let's say you had a college course that covered a lot of different topics, and you have the syllabus because you remembered to save that, and it shows on that syllabus where the different content areas are. You can split it. Maybe it was a course that covered planning, evaluation, and then how to organize the community around it. So you can split it between different areas. If you're going to do that, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and have that syllabus. If you, like me, took college classes back with dinosaurs, it may be more difficult, but it's not impossible. We will figure that out. So, again, those classes, when I say OCDPD, PB, that's Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board. If they weren't specifically approved and they don't have that little P1 and the number of hours, some of those may be used, and we can look at those individually. I would prefer, and the board would prefer, that the majority of your hours come from courses that are approved through the board, but they don't all have to be. So again, your first step for that is just to get them all in one place. So, step 3. This is where you're going to complete all the additional forms. There's a experience form that you have to complete. And again, this is where some of these are now online through eLicense. Some of them are still paper that you have to scan in, so you'll have to look. And I'm always welcome to do a Zoom and screen share and walk you through it. It's perfectly fine because I know it is confusing. But if you don't have a way to scan things in, there is an app. I like my app. It's called Tiny Scanner, but you can pick whatever app you want to use. I like Tiny Scanner. It just works for me. But it takes a picture of it and turns it into a PDF. But whatever you need to do is just scan in everything. When you first apply, you're going to have to scan in all your certificates. So scan them all in. Make sure your name is on them. Some places they've been getting good lately because they're supposed to have everybody's name on them. But if for some reason they gave you one without a name on it, put your name on it before you scan it in. If you need to have your official transcripts sent to the board because you're using some of those hours, there is a specific email. It's at the bottom of the page, but it's right here too, that you have to send those to. So you will contact your school. I would contact Florida State University, and I would say, hey, I need an official transcript sent to this email address. They would say that'll be $1 billion, and I will say, here you go. Tip on this, do not send these until you're ready to submit everything, because I don't want you getting them lost, misplaced, because you don't have everything in. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Tessa. You can scan documents if you're using an iPhone or using a Notes app. See, I don't have that. I don't have an iPhone. I have the good Android. But thank you, Tessa. I thank you for letting me know. All right. So this supervisor reference form is, for the most part, online now. But they're still working on getting all of the credentials reference forms online. So just make sure that you check and see if it's online or if you need to have them fill it out and upload it. Again, supervisor does not need to be the person who signs your check. It needs to just be somebody who has those credentials that we showed earlier. If you don't have someone, if the person who signs your check is not listed as one of those who needs the certain credentials, look at things like your board. Maybe the agency board has a person who has the appropriate credentials. A lot of times there's a nurse on the board. There you go. Or maybe you have a coalition that you can use someone from the coalition as your supervisor. If all else fails, reach out to other prevention professionals. If you are new to prevention and you are on Facebook, I would highly encourage you to get into the Ohio Prevention Professionals Facebook group. That's Ohio Prevention Professionals. It's very important to build that, especially right now where we can't see each other, is to build that team of prevention professionals that you have around. And so since we can't see each other, that's one way to do it. If you are filling out the supervisor form and then having them sign it and scan it in, don't fill out the supervisor part. There's one part that's you, that you fill out and sign, then there's one part that they fill out and sign. I did have someone have theirs sent back because they had filled out everything except for the signature, and it was just questioned. So just make sure that, you know, the supervisor fills those out. All right, step 4, you got everything? You're ready? Sign into eLicense. Excuse me. Oh, we have a good question here. Let's see. Will prevention certification move eventually under another licensing board, since comprehensive prevention for today's complex challenges is much more than chemical dependency prevention? That's a fantastic question, and that is entirely above my pay grade. I think for right now, it's probably going to stay there. I don't see it moving anytime within the next couple of years. I agree, you know, there's suicide prevention, there's gambling prevention, but for right now, I have a feeling it's going to stay there. So, good question. So you're going to go to your eLicense. You should already have at least an account because you have your RA. You're going to sign in and you're going to select apply for a new license. It's going to seem weird because you're like, well, I already have the RA, but that's the way it lists it. Complete all the online steps, and they've made it now, I believe, so that it says, you know, you still have 80% to go, or you still have 20% to go. So that kind of helps you know when you're complete. So complete all those steps, upload everything that you need to upload. You do have to pay for it, and then submit your application. So if you are doing the OCPSA, OCPS, or OCPC, for all of them, this is the steps you will take. Next is wait. You get to wait. Right now, there's a lot of people. We've kind of been overloading the system because we're trying to get as many people as we can credentialed. So It says 45 days, and it very well could take those 45 days. Don't worry. It's, it's in process. It could take less. I'm not going to tell you it will, but it could take less. But there's not a whole lot you can do to speed up the process. Don't email them and keep asking, because they will not be happy about that. If you applied for the OCPSA, all you'll need to do is just wait and receive the notification that you were approved. If you applied for the OCPS or OCPC, you will have to take a test. Don't freak out. There's going to be resources available for that too. But so you will be waiting to find out if you were approved to take the test. I've had people ask me, well, when do I take the test? Do I take it before? No, you got to wait until you're approved to take the test. What if you aren't approved? What if they send it back and they say, oh my goodness, you left this out, or this needs to go in a different area, or we really don't want to approve this training? Don't freak out. A large number of people get it sent back for something. If you get it approved the first time around, do a happy dance, because you're probably in about a 20% group there. Most people have to fix something. It's not a big deal. Sometimes it's just, oh, you need to get this signed, or move this into this grid and it'll work. So don't just get discouraged. Just send whatever information you need, fix it. Email me, we'll walk through it together. Not a big deal. One thing to check if you are not approved, if it's sent back, make sure that you have everything you need for that credential that you're applying for. Sometimes you might hit the wrong one. Maybe you hit OCPS and you really meant the OCPSA. But Mary at the board, and all of them are at the board, are really good. If you don't understand, just contact them and say, hey, you sent me this. I know I need to fix something. Can you help me figure that out? Again, they are bombarded right now. So you're welcome to reach out to me too, and I'll see what I can do if I understand what they have told you. But again, don't freak out if you are not approved right away. But if you are approved for the OCPSA, first do your little happy dance. Print out your certificate. I know you'll have it electronically, but I always like to have a paper copy. Some places you'll have to turn in that copy for your personnel file, so it doesn't hurt to go ahead and have that available. And then make sure that every 2 years you get the correct continuing education. You do need to take an ethics course every 2 years. It'll be a 3-hour ethics course. So my suggestion is always, as soon as you renew for 1 year or for your next 2-year period, go ahead and find an ethics, because sometimes it's hard to get those. And then I always tell people, once you get the one credential, start working on the next one. So step 6, if you are approved to take that credentialing test, you're going to want to begin studying. And to be honest, you probably should just go ahead and start studying right from the beginning. They will give you a list of local testing sites. My understanding is now they are starting to open back up. I know for a while they were closed down because of COVID, but apparently they are starting to open back up. So look at those, register at one of them, and then that's where you'll take your test. It's all on computer. So for those of us, again, who were around with dinosaurs, you'll know that you have to take it on a computer. There is a free practice test here, and also Ms. Christy Valentini-Lechner and another one of her coworkers are doing some test prep classes. I don't know when the next one is, but there's a lot of resources that can help you with that test. But this practice test is free. There's a couple things it'll do for you. Number one, it will help you get used to taking those tests online, because, if you did not grow up taking tests on a computer, it can be a little daunting of a task. Number two, even though these aren't the current questions, they're all old questions, it'll help you figure out, oh, you know what, every time there's one about evaluation, I get it wrong. So maybe I need to look more into evaluation. Plus, it'll help reduce the anxiety about taking a test. I had one person I was working with that took the online test 100 times. She passed her first time. Helped with that anxiety. So here are just a few of the study resources. You can, again, when you download the PDF, these will be on here, but honestly, when I go to look them up, I always just Google it because it's easier to put in CADCA primers or Rhode Island study guide. Just comes up that way. But the Rhode Island study guide has information. It's older, but it's still, prevention hasn't changed a whole lot. It's got information, and then in the back of it, it has a practice test. You may not want to print off the whole thing because I think it's like 70-something pages, but maybe just the last part that has the practice test in it. CADCA primers, if you don't know what those are, or if you've never looked at them, please look at them. They are primers that go over each of the areas or the strategies for coalition work. The current test has a lot of coalition information on it. So what you might do is, you might pull out the planning primer, and maybe for a week you focus on that. You read it, you talk to people about it, you read it again, just to kind of get yourself involved in that. And then there's also ICNRC, which is our National Credentialing Board, has a candidate guide that has a lot of good information in it as well. Again, I just Google them because typing in that whole website is not easy. But you can get that straight out of the PDF of this PowerPoint. All right, so on test day, what do we do? Please make sure you follow all the rules. I think it's things like you can't bring in your phone, so just leave your purse and everything out in the car, or your wallet, whatever. I think you need your driver's license, but just leave things in the car. You don't want to get in trouble for having something there you weren't supposed to have. Take a deep breath, focus, you'll be fine. One way or another, even if you don't pass, it's not a big deal. You can take it again. Make sure you read all the options. Use a lot of those test-taking tips that we were taught way back. Eliminate the ones that are definitely not true, and then look at the ones that you have left and find one. When you get to the end of the test, there will be a screen that will come up that will say pass or fail. It's a provisional pass or fail. I have not yet heard of anybody who said they got a pass or fail at the end of the test and then it got changed later, but it is possible. So 9 times out of 10 or more, it is going to be the right way. All right, so I have a question. Are community health workers required to get prevention certification, or is their training sufficient to serve in roles such as infant mortality prevention and other health prevention navigation? That's a fantastic question, Patty, and one that I don't have a fantastic answer for. I think part of it would have to do with funding and where the funding comes. Infant mortality prevention and other health prevention, I don't think it's 100% required. It's not a bad idea, because if you wanted to scoot into some other type of prevention, Christy, I don't know if Christy's still there or not, but do you have any other thoughts on that?
I'm still here, and yeah, I don't have anything. The two of us can look into it, Patty, and
yeah.
I mean, you're not.
I would.
Required. I think it's just the policy of the agency organization.
Yeah.
So.
I think a big part of it would be where the finances where the funding is coming from. So, but thank you. I like being challenged with questions. That was good. So you will get that provisional pass or fail, but just know that it's provisional. You can still do a happy dance, but just make it a small happy dance. So then you will wait, and I don't know how long they're taking now. See, back in the old days when I took this test in 2003, we had to wait 6 weeks before we got our test results. So I don't know if it's still 6 weeks after you take it where you'll get your official, but you will get an email that says, congratulations, you did pass, you're fantastic. Again, print out that certificate. They don't mail them anymore. It's all just emailed. Turn that into your supervisor. Just helps, put it in your personnel file, your permanent record. And then make sure you get that continuing education because we don't want that to lapse. Just so in case you haven't been on here, this is what that Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board looks like. This is actually going to the prevention page. And when you scroll down, you'll see all the different applications and what you have to have for everything. But just, again, it says the review process can take up to 40 business days. See, I even gave them 5 extra days. So know that it could take a while. But this is also the board for treatment credentials. This is the eLicense portal. So when you go into eLicense, this is what it will look like. If you don't have an account, you'll have to create an account. If you do have an account, you can just log in. If you're like me, you'll forget your password 50 times and have to redo it each time, which is lovely and fun. Make sure you are following the scope of practice in the Code of Ethics. Again, that's why I put those in the handouts. If you are an RA, you should not be supervising OCPSs. It's just doesn't work like that. You can be doing it through the agency, but through prevention credentials, that person needs to have someone who has a higher credential. Please maintain your credentials. Make sure you get your ethics course and all your needed hours. One time I've been through eight different renewal years, and one year I waited until the last minute to get some of those things, and I was sweating. So don't do that. Don't be like Jennifer. Go ahead and get as many of the hours as early as you can. And the ethics right now we're doing some online, and it's free, and you can do it in your jammies. And if you got your credentials and renewed yesterday, you can take the ethics tomorrow, and it'll count for your next one. There is an ability to go inactive. So let's say something comes up, either a health concern or a wonderful thing, like maybe you had a baby and you're not going to be doing prevention for 6 months while you hang out with that baby. Then you can go inactive. It stops that 2-year timeline. But just know that you're not supposed to be doing any prevention work during that 2-hour timeline. Another thing I want to make sure that we're all doing is advocating for others in prevention to pursue their credentials. I know that this isn't, the medical field, but we wouldn't want a doctor who doesn't have a license. I want to see as many prevention professionals getting their credentials as possible. This is how we're going to develop and maintain legitimacy in our field. So, you can look at the list and you can say, oh my God, that looks so daunting. I don't know if I can do it. Please reach out. I will be more than happy to walk you through it. I do it every day. Besides the fact that I'm a dork and I love to do it, I also get paid to do it, so don't feel like you're bothering me. It's kind of fun for me. That is my contact information. So please email me, say, hey, I was in that training, here's where I am. One of the first things I'm going to ask you to do is to email me all your certificates so that I can help you figure out where everything goes and make sure that you've got everything. So if you already have that, you can include that with that first email. And then we'll schedule a phone call or Zoom or whatever. Unfortunately, right now we're not doing face-to-face, but this will work too. So what questions do you have? And I know some people might not know what questions they have until they really sit down and look at this, but they may have questions.
You can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can type it in the question box.
Or if you just want to say hi.
That too.
Or tell me your favorite joke. Oh, a question. So excited. Yes. Okay. So here's a question. Is it okay if I end up deviating slightly from my professional development plan? Nobody's going to follow you around with the professional development plan and see if you followed it exactly. It's just so that they know you've got your thoughts correct. So, just make sure that, that you're being thoughtful about it. But no, if you can completely deviate, you can all of a sudden have a pandemic hit and have all kinds of extra education that you want to do. Totally fine. Not a problem. All right. So then the next question is, if your RA has expired, can you still apply for the OCPSA? Yes. In fact, that's what you'll need to do. If your RA has expired, technically you're not supposed to be doing prevention work. You cannot renew it. It is a two-year credential. And yes, we can post my email back up in just a second. But don't, if you don't make it, don't freak out. You will have to apply straight for the next credential, but just do it ASAP. Let's see. What is the passing score? You know what? I don't know what that is now. At one point it was like 5-something out of 800. But that was back when we had to do Scantrons. So I'm not sure what the passing score is at this point. But I think it's about 80%. Oh my goodness. So somebody has a favorite joke. A man walked into a bar. It hurt. Okay, so someone says she thinks one of the passing scores in the study guide. Sometimes when I look at what the passing score is, it makes me a little anxious. So sometimes I don't look because that way I can just say, I'll just do my best and get as high a score as I can. I hope this was helpful. I also hope that I hear from some of you guys. If I hear from all of you, you may be farmed off to other people to help you. Doesn't mean I don't like you. It just means I maybe reached capacity. But there is multiple people in OCAM who can help with this. So don't worry. But I'm excited to see so many people wanting to learn. So as far as where to find other trainings, if you have signed up for this one, you will then, correct me if I'm wrong, Christy, you'll be on the Prevention First email list. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So you will get emails about that, including ethics trainings that will be coming. The other place to look is if you go on to Prevention Action Alliance and sign up for their emails. E-Based Academy will have some trainings. They don't have a lot, but they have some. PTTC, the Prevention Training and Technical Assistance Center, has trainings that you can look at. Let's see, what month is this? So we've got CADCA will be coming up in February. Oh my goodness, sorry, I just saw the next joke. There's trainings through a lot of those kind of places. Also, if you are on Facebook, and I'm not saying you have to be just for this, but if you are on Facebook, a lot of times trainings are put into that Ohio Prevention Professionals group. The only thing I will say is make sure that it doesn't say treatment, recovery, addiction, sometimes addiction might work. Treatment, recovery, counseling, those probably would not work towards your prevention credentials. Okay, I got to read this joke. Panda walks into a coffee shop and orders a coffee and a water. Oh, I didn't see. Julian, I didn't do that right. A panda walks into a coffee shop and orders a coffee and a water. Barista asks, "Why the long pause?" Bear says, "I was born with them." Sorry. All right. Any other questions? I was never meant to be a comedian. For sure.
Well, I thank you all for your time and your engagement and your questions. And Jennifer, I thank you for your expertise. And I will close off the session, and we hope to see you in the afternoon sessions.
Thanks, guys. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy this beautiful, cool weather.